Elton John, the unfiltered critic shaping music's legacy. Elton John has never been careful with his words. Not in interviews, not on stage, and definitely not when it comes to other artists. Over the decades, he's praised musicians so passionately that he's helped revive careers overnight. But he's also done the opposite, publicly calling certain artists overrated, criticizing their performances, or questioning their legacy. And when Elton says something like that, it doesn't feel like gossip. It feels like judgment from someone who's survived every era of modern pop music. Elton isn't a commentator watching from the sidelines. He's been inside the machine since the late 1960s. He's seen hype cycles come and go. He's watched careers explode and disappear. He knows the difference between marketing and musicianship, between a moment and a catalog. So when he labels someone overrated, he's not usually attacking their success. He's questioning what that success is built on. What makes someone overrated in the music world? And here's where it gets interesting. Most of the artists he's criticized aren't obscure. They're giants, cultural forces, global icons, which makes the tension even sharper. Because when you criticize someone at the top, you're not just critiquing them, you're challenging the system that put them there. So today, we're not just looking at the 7 artists Elton John has publicly criticized or implied were overrated. We're looking at why he said it, what he values, and whether overrated, in Elton's world, actually means something very different from what we think. The most famous example is Madonna. Elton didn't just hint, he went straight at her. He criticized her live performances, accused her of lip-syncing, and at one award show mocked her nomination for Best Live Act. At one point, he even called her a fairground stripper in an interview. It wasn't subtle, it wasn't diplomatic, it was Elton at full volume. But the real issue wasn't Madonna's influence. Elton has never denied her impact on pop culture. The criticism centered on live performance authenticity. Elton built his career sweating behind a piano, voice raw, mistakes audible, nothing hidden. For him, that vulnerability is the point. If your build is live, you sing live. That's the contract. Madonna, on the other hand, came from spectacle, choreography, reinvention, theater. Her shows were precision productions. For her, performance was about control, not risk. So what looked to Elton like dishonesty looked to Madonna like professionalism. Two completely different philosophies colliding in public. Artistic philosophies can clash dramatically. And here's the twist. Years later, they reconciled. Madonna reportedly confronted him directly. They cleared the air, which tells you something important. This wasn't personal hatred. It was artistic disagreement, amplified by two enormous egos who weren't afraid of conflict. Elton didn't name names at first. He made a broader statement. If you're charging people to see a live show and you're lip-syncing, they deserve a refund. But in interviews, when pressed, Janet Jackson's tours became part of that conversation. And suddenly, the criticism had a face. Again, the issue wasn't her songwriting or influence. Janet Jackson helped shape pop and R&B across decades. The issue for Elton was authenticity. He grew up in an era where imperfections were proof of honesty. If your voice cracked, it meant you were actually singing. If you missed a note, it meant you were human. Janet's shows were choreographed spectacles, high-intensity dance routines, synchronized lighting, flawless execution. In that kind of environment, backing tracks aren't unusual. They're practical. But to Elton, practicality wasn't the standard. Principle was. Is spectacle replacing musicianship? Elton wonders. Elton John has never hidden his disdain for reality TV music competitions. He's said bluntly that shows like The X Factor, or similar formats, create stars too quickly, manufacturing fame before artists have time to develop. And in his view, that shortcut produces careers that look bigger than they are. He's argued that great artists aren't built in front of cameras. They're built in clubs, in failed gigs, in empty rooms, in rejection. That slow grind forces growth. It sharpens songwriting. It humbles ego. When fame arrives before that process, Elton believes the foundation is weak. To be clear, he hasn't said every winner lacks talent. His criticism is about structure. When the industry inflates someone overnight, the hype can outpace the artistry. And when that happens, audiences may mistake exposure for excellence. Is instant fame sustainable? Elton has, at various points, hinted that some 80s acts were more about production than songwriting. He never always named names, but the implication was clear. When you strip away the synthesizers, drum machines, and studio gloss, does the song still stand? This is important, because Elton thrived in the 70s and survived the 80s. He adapted to changing sounds, but he has consistently said that melody is king. If you can't sit at a piano or with a guitar and make the song work, then the production is doing too much of the heavy lifting. For him, a great song survives translation. It can be played acoustically, rearranged, covered decades later, and still hold its emotional core. When production becomes the main event, he sees that as temporary, powerful in the moment, but fragile over time. Craftsmanship over fleeting trends. Elton went after Billy Joel in a way that surprised a lot of people, because this wasn't some distant celebrity spat. They were peers, touring partners, and publicly friendly. But in a Rolling Stone interview, Elton suggested Billy was coasting artistically and implied his attempts at rehab hadn't been serious enough, calling it basically rehab light. The tone wasn't playful. It was blunt, almost parental. Elton framing it as tough love, even while acknowledging it would upset him. And what makes this one hit harder is that Billy Joel did respond, saying it hurt, and that it created real bad blood between them for a time. In the context of this video idea, this fits the overrated theme in a specific way. Elton wasn't saying Billy had no talent. He was saying the public narrative that everything was fine didn't match what he saw behind the scenes. Elton has also suggested, sometimes subtly, sometimes not, that certain artists are elevated more by image than by music. He's never always listed names in those moments, but the message is consistent. Cultural presence is not the same thing as musical legacy. Elton comes from a catalog era. Albums mattered. Deep cuts mattered. Longevity mattered. If you didn't have a body of work that could stand the test of time, the industry would eventually expose you. Today, he sees artists become iconic before they've proven endurance. Is reputation outpacing music? Elton has also told a famous story about Bob Dylan showing up at a party and Elton not recognizing him, describing him as a scruffy-looking guy who wandered in, to the point Elton thought he might be staff. Then Elton tried to fix him, offering clothes, suggesting a makeover, basically treating Dylan like a random stranger who didn't fit the room. It's not framed as Dylan is untalented, but it is framed as Dylan being oddly unimpressive in person, which feeds the broader Elton pattern. He doesn't bow to mythology when reality disappoints him. And that's the key. Elton's overrated energy often isn't "you're bad." It's the legend around you is bigger than what I'm seeing right now. That's why this story survives, because it punctures the aura. So why does Elton keep saying it? Why risk backlash? Why criticize artists who are commercially successful, culturally dominant, and deeply loved? Because Elton John came up in an era of brutal competition. There were no shortcuts, no viral moments, no instant global fame. You wrote songs, you toured relentlessly, you bombed, you improved, and only then did you earn staying power. He believes durability is the real measure, not streaming numbers, not trending topics, not award show headlines, but whether the songs still matter 20, 30, 40 years later. And here's the crucial point. Elton rarely attacks young artists trying their best. He criticizes systems that inflate careers before they're tested. He critiques performance standards when he feels audiences are being misled. He challenges hype when he thinks it overshadows substance. In other words, he isn't trying to tear people down. He's defending what he believes music should be. The word overrated sounds cruel. It sounds dismissive. But in Elton John's vocabulary, it often means something more specific. It means celebrated beyond the craftsmanship. It means spectacle outweighing songwriting. It means fame growing faster than foundation. You don't have to agree with him. Many people don't. Some of the artists he's criticized have reshaped culture in undeniable ways. But Elton's perspective comes from decades inside the industry, watching careers rise and fall. And whether he's right or wrong, one thing is undeniable. He earned the right to have strong opinions. Because before he ever called someone overrated, he proved himself first. So yeah, what do you think? Comment and subscribe for more videos.